Welcome back to the Baseball Blue Book Podcast, where we focus on the journey, not the destination. Brought to you by the Baseball Blue Book app. Are you in the book? And now, your host, Eric Wobanaw. All right, welcome back to the Baseball Blue Book Podcast. Eric Wobanaw here, president of the Baseball Blue Book. We got a great guest today with Kevin Burdick out at Widener University. Kevin, how are you today?
I'm doing well, Eric. How are you?
We're doing well. It's a good day. Fall is here. The World Series has been a lot of fun, and we're just excited to get this one going. Interested to hear today's journey. We talked a little bit at the beginning that your journey is a little bit different than a lot of coaches. And so we're going to go ahead and get started. Would like you to just do a quick introduction, and then and we'll get going.
Yeah, I'm Kevin Burdick. I am the head coach at Widener University. I grew up in the Philadelphia area, right in the suburbs, Plymouth Meeting country. And I'm back there now, but during the college years, I was in Florida. I was in Denver, Colorado. So been around a little bit, but made my way back home to the Philadelphia area.
That's awesome. Always great to get back home. That is for sure. And so we'll start with the journey. We know that yours is a bit different, as I mentioned. You didn't play college ball, and so why don't we start kind of there? Certainly, you played ball, and so it's a passion of yours. Why don't we go ahead and get started with your journey and how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, 100%. So, yeah, like I said, I grew up in Plymouth Meeting right outside of Philadelphia, and I think it's everybody's dream in the Northeast to go play baseball down south. So I had a coach that I used to train with that played at Eckerd College. And after a quick Google search, I saw that it was a school on the beach that offered baseball, and I was dead set on going there. I was recruited to play football and baseball in college, but my mind was set on going down there. And it was a lesson that I try to apply today. I didn't do any research. I just saw the beach and I saw the baseball and I was there. I think I visited once and all I cared about was seeing the water in the baseball field. And then my first real eye-opening day was the day we moved in, and I was like, what did I do? And I fully intended on playing baseball, and I did. I went out. I was a preferred walk-on for Coach Matthews, and that first practice, I was like, what did I do? Why did I pick here? I was overmatched from the start, but I held my own. I had a decent fall. I was actually injured, and it took me until many years after graduation to realize that I got cut, not because I was injured, but because I wasn't good enough. But, after my sophomore year, when I decided to officially be done with trying out and trying to make the team, I joined Coach Matthews as my work study job, and I started to get into the recruiting side of things, answering emails from kids just like myself that wanted that opportunity to go down south. And that kind of brought me to going down to the field, helping the team out there, to going out and actually going to recruiting events and seeing, the power or the influence that coaches have. And then I fell in love with the mental side of the game. I was a psychology major, and I knew that I wanted to stay in sport doing performance psychology, and that's what kind of led me to grad school where I focused on performance psychology. Got into coaching out in Denver. Was at Regis University as the mental skills coach. I was done. I came home, and Coach LaRosa at the time was the head coach of Widener, and he gave me an opportunity to be the hitting coach, and I haven't left since.
You brought up not doing as much research as what you should have done, and kind of making that jump into where you went down at Eckerd. And what I was thinking as you said that is, and I think you actually alluded to it later down, in what you were saying is the influence that these coaches have on people. I mean, you had a coach in high school that mentioned this school, and it was all of a sudden it was it, and so
Yep.
quite the influence that that coach had on you that determined basically your journey, right? I mean, I think we don't understand the gravity of the influence that we have as coaches, right? And so take that kind of, it was real world, right? Real world example of influence and your psychology background. How do you take those experiences and what you've learned into applying that now into what you're doing as the head coach at Widener?
Yeah, transitioning from being an assistant coach to head coach, the real first lesson I learned is as a head coach, the words that you say matter more than they do as an assistant coach. The players are going to listen to every single thing you say, so that influence is there. But how I apply it, if you start in their journey, I don't want anybody to make the same mistake I did. Not that I made a mistake on Akron. It
Right.
changed my life and it made me who I am today. But if I could go back, I would have done a little bit more research. So when I'm in the recruiting process, I make sure to one, I tell that story, and two, I make sure that they're choosing Widener because that's where they actually want to be. It's not because of one singular element. It's about the whole piece of the pie and why they want Widener. So we do talk about that a lot throughout the process, and it to the point where I tell all of our recruits, I want you to go see as many schools as you possibly
Yep.
can. Because I want you to choose this place because this is where you want to be. Yeah, and we talk about, once they're on campus, we talk a lot about the psychology and the mental side of the game and trying to get them where they need to go. But yeah, the influence of coaches is huge, and we as a community need to be aware of that, because people are going to
Yep.
follow everything that
No,
we say.
that's absolutely right. The funny thing is, if you flip it around, um, a lot of players don't they look at that their decision based on baseball and they don't take into account all the other things around. So you might have made a mistake from a baseball perspective, but you actually made the right decision because you made a choice
Yep.
of all the other the other things that you should be thinking about when you pick a program, right?
Yeah.
Where it's located. Do you like the dorms? I always laugh because Coach Meckley up at Penn State York, he always says, you got to like the food. Check out the cafeteria. Because those are things that are the day to day. And if baseball doesn't work out, you better like where you're at. And I think that's absolutely true. So you're a psychology background, and I'm sure that applying that in your day to day is very very important and really a focus and really you're kind of ahead of the curve, right? That is becoming such an impactful part of the game, and it always has been, but the focus on it has maybe not been there, right? Yogi Berra says, right, 90% of baseball
Yeah.
baseball is 50% mental, right? We've known it. What are some of the things that, as you are going through this and your journey, what have been the biggest challenges of the focus on this? And how do you balance that with obviously you need good talent. The fundamentals of baseball are the fundamentals. You got to have that, but the mental is important. So how do you balance that, and how do you what are some of the struggles that you go through with that?
100%. Yeah, I think the biggest struggle, and luckily it's starting to change in baseball, is the stigma behind the mental side of baseball. I think a lot of athletes, not just baseball, but we'll keep it to baseball. They see mental health, they or mental or performance psychology, psychologists, whatever it may be, and they don't want to admit that they
Right.
need help, or they don't know they need help. And what we're seeing, because of some great work by people in professional baseball at the college level, that stigma is going away. So we work tirelessly. Once a student athlete gets in our program, we talk about it right away. We have a mental skills manual that we send out to our players for them to follow, and how we incorporate it with the balance that you're talking about. Um, we use breathing as a big technique. So it's really easy to incorporate during stretching, in between working the heart rate, getting it up and down. And then it's just little things that myself and my coaching staff really talk about when we get into position player, individual groups. Um, I like to say we're tricking them into doing it, so they don't even know that they're doing it. They just think it's part of the drill or whatever, and then they start to apply it
Yeah. Yep.
during the game. But it's definitely a balance, and I think if you try to shove it down players' throats, that they don't respond as well to it. So figuring out each individual on your team and how to apply it, and making sure that they know that this is only there to help you.
Right. Right.
And when they do fail, I like to say this, and I think this is really important. If we're trying to do something and we're in a different mental state every single time that we try to do it, how can we find the issue that's going
Yep.
on? We need to start at the same place every single time, and then we can figure out what's wrong mechanically with whether it's their swing or on the mound, whatever it may be. So we really talk about starting in the same place mentally before they perform anything.
That's really important. I love that. My wife's a yoga instructor, and everything's about breath. Everything starts with breath, and to see it incorporated into other things. I use it my day, right, in business. When you don't start at the same place, you can't figure out what's the struggle. Is it because of this, because of that? Because it might just be because you're stressed or you're not focused on certain things. But going back to that kind of the basics of our body is different than the basics of baseball. And I think bringing that all the way back, I think that's really important. Is this something that you were always kind of aware of, and that's that drove you into the study, so that you could understand it more, or and what have you learned through that process that might have been something that you didn't really understand at first, you just knew it was there, and what kind of what were the things that really opened your eyes in your journey?
Yeah, I was a head case when I played, and that's
Okay.
kind of what led me to figure. I was like, not everybody reacts the same way I do. Not everybody's getting as worked up as I do before a
Yeah.
game. Why? And so I started to learn. At Eckerd, there was an opportunity to create your own class, and I took advantage of that, and I created a sports psychology class. I think it was 3 credits or something like that. And I found a very basic book, to walk through how the mind affects the body, how your brain and your thoughts can actually change the way that your body responds. If you're angry or nervous, your body's going to kind of tense up, and without you even having control of that, and that can affect your swing, that can affect all of your mechanics. If you're too loose or you're too excited, now your focus is going everywhere and you're not locked in on what you need to. And that's something that I really struggled with, was my focus when I was playing. I was all over the place, and when it was time to lock in, I just couldn't do it. And then throughout my time at Eckerd, my first 2 years, when I was trying out for the team, I spent more time on the bench during that fall than I ever have in my entire career, because it's the one thing that people need to realize. Once you get to college, everybody's good, and you're not always going to be the starter like you were in high school. I started to see other people struggle with the things that I was struggling with, some of my teammates and classmates. So at the time, I had no idea what I was talking about, but I was trying to help them calm down, to help them to focus, and seeing their success when they were able to do it, really made me happy, right? I like to think that, this isn't about my ego. I like to think that I had some part to do with it, and that's what kind of drove me in the coaching, where I want to be a part of people's success. Maybe not the reason, but if I can just be a small part in their success, whether it be on the field or in life after college, that's what kind of drives me. So I think it started with my own shortcomings, and then starting to apply when I know I messed up, being into help of my teammates, and now my players today.
And you're probably most suited to answer this question because you had those struggles, but the mind and training the mind in this way is no different than training your body in a swing or in fielding or whatever. Why don't you expand on that, on the actual the practicing this as something that isn't, I can't, it's not really achieved, right? It's not something like, okay, today we're going to get your mind ready and everything's going to be great and now we go forward, right? It's just part of the growing process in everybody's life, right? So kind of talk about how you get kids that have never really thought about doing this before. Because you hear it all the time, right? I'm just a hothead, or I'm just real calm and I'm real collected, right? That's those are learned behaviors. And in my experience, expand on that.
Yeah. Before I do it, I think in the recruiting process, the kid that gets labeled as the hothead or whatever, I light up because they're getting checked off other people's, rosters.
Good point. Yeah.
Yeah, I can take him and we can mold him. But yeah, I think once a player realizes that the mind is shaped just like a muscle, and you've got to spend time to train it and train it and train it to get it stronger, and you're going to learn and you're going to continue to learn. I think that helps players understand how to develop it. Now, I think the the harder part for an athlete is understanding that a muscle is going to grow, right? And you're going to see that you're going to get faster, stronger, whatever. With your mind, your head's not getting bigger, right? So you're not able to see the rewards as easily with a muscle.
Yep.
But the most important part in the very beginning, and like you said, it's you can train one day and it's good for one day. The next day, it's completely different. The awareness piece of where your mind is at, where your thoughts are. If we can just be aware, we can move on to the other stuff, and that's the biggest thing that we teach is the thoughts that you have are fine. They don't need to dictate your actions, though. But if you're not even aware that you're thinking these things, that's where we need to train to say, okay, if I think something as little as don't walk them, right? Don't lose them. That affects your body.
Yep.
That affects how you grip the ball. And if you don't even know that you're doing that, that's a problem. And so being able to create awareness of our thoughts is step one. And as we build it out, it's all about awareness. It's all about awareness.
Yeah, the way I look at it is it's kind of like being present, and awareness and present. It's kind of like the transition of expectations to process. A lot of coaches talk about the process, and I think I hear what you're talking about is awareness is really as important as the process of the baseball of what we're doing, right? There's a process of how to get where we are, but being aware of your emotions and your feelings and how you respond to things is being present and being understanding of who you are. That's really powerful. Let's talk about from a journey perspective. Again, getting to where you want to be is also a process and a journey. It's not like you've figured it all out. And you've talked about some of the challenges you've had. What are some of the successes as you continue to grow as a coach and understanding how to talk through kids? And because everything continues to change, right? I mean, COVID blew everybody's world, changed everything, and so what might have worked 3 years ago is now modified a bit. Or is that not the case? Is it still kind of the same thing? It's just it's something that came in that we have to address.
Yeah, well, as you expand, I think in your last segment you talked about thoughts and feelings and emotions. You take an 18 to 23-year-old, that's something they don't want to do, and share those things.
No.
But talk about perspective and opportunity, right? COVID came in, and at the time I was the assistant coach. I took over in 2021, so that was that first season after. The head coach at the time, Mike LaRosa, who was at Westchester, he really wanted to take that time and use Zoom to change the perspective, to teach some of these things. So that was an opportunity for me to talk to the team a little bit more and in greater detail about the mental side of the game. And I think that really helped. So we took a negative and turned it into a positive.
Oh, that's great.
And that's what I continue to do. I think my progression as a head coach, I'm not perfect. I make tons of mistakes. Everybody else does. But I'm realizing this year really the importance of culture, the importance of incorporating things every day. It's one thing to talk about, but you gotta live it every single day. The words that I use when I address the team, the energy that I bring, the team's gonna match me. And I'm very loose, and then I realize when I'm too loose, my players are too loose, and we have a really bad practice. Or if I'm having a bad day and I bring it down to the field, now my players aren't having fun, and we're not learning, we're not getting better. So I think the biggest takeaway in my short time as a head coach that you use your energy and the importance of culture. Having a strong, and everybody talks about culture, and it's like one of those hot words and what it is and what it's not. Um, so I don't want to get too much down the weeds there, but living the
Yeah.
culture every day, I think, is a transition that we're experiencing right now in our program. Like we did not have a good culture last year, and this year that is the big we have is building that up.
That is it. Doesn't it, it? It sucks that the coach has so much responsibility, right? You think you hit it,
Yeah.
you get to the coach and you can do this. The responsibility is massive, and I keep going back to the influence that your coach had in high school. I mean, a simple thing of, man, you got to check this out, and that's you were it. That was it. We have no idea how much influence we have on every word that we say, the level that we are at from an emotion perspective. There's a lot of catchphrases out there of leaving the problems, before you hit the field, and you're in a, it's a lot easier to said than done. And having that example and just focusing on that is, it can be overwhelming. And we haven't even talked about winning a game yet, right? We haven't even we haven't even put a roster together. It's just simply living as you preach, and that's a big thing, and it's always been a big thing. So I think that's pretty awesome. When you think about those things, I like to ask two questions. The first one is really the advice, and a lot of younger coaches don't like this, but I'll tell you what, there's so much knowledge in everybody's experiences. It doesn't matter if they've been coaching for 40 years or it's their first year. They've all got good experiences to build on. What would be a piece of advice that you'd give to any coach that is potentially needing to work on the mental side, because it's something that a lot of people, you have certainly a leg up with your background and the studies. So what would that piece of advice be for coaches?
Yeah, we're on the spot there. There's so much that goes through my head, but and this is a cliche thing. You're either coaching it or you're allowing it, right? And that's a piece of advice that I like to really focus on when I talk to other coaches that are trying to implement it. And that incorporates a lot of things. It's very broad, but when you talk about the mental side, how your players respond to adversity, if you don't address that and you don't fix that, you're allowing it to happen. And if you do address it and you're not changing that behavior, you're coaching that behavior. I think when it comes down to baseball or any sport, we're all going to deal with that adversity, and being able to address it in the right way, get your players to respond the right way. That would be my advice: is understand how you want your players to deal with adversity, show it to them
Yeah.
every day.
Yeah.
And if you can do that, you're well on your
I
way.
think that's fantastic. I mean, a coach can do so much of showing how to hit and how to throw, because they're the athlete. It's really living that day to day of the things that you can absolutely be an impact on who they are, and it's how you respond. That's a simple one, right? How do you respond to something good and something bad? And that's, everybody has their own way of doing it, and just in figuring what works for your program, for your whatever it is, your life is so important. Go over the second question is really the advice that you have for players. It's an interesting situation. Baseball, there's so many opportunities to play baseball. And so what is some advice that you would give to players that are wanting to play at the collegiate level?
Yeah, that's a good one because there's so many. But I'll touch on this, not to promote my own Twitter page. But I do tweet out from time to time some recruiting advice that I think is important. And the other day I tweeted out the bell curve, which is very simple. The majority of us are going to be in that bell curve based on our talent or where we're at developmental. We're recruiting outside of that bell curve, whether it's Division One, JUCO, whatever it may be, two, three, whatever. We're recruiting out there. Once we get those players, we're going back to the middle of that bell curve, and your job is to become an outlier again. So all that to say that if you're not where you want to be yet, understand that it is a timeline of development. Some people are starting further up that timeline than you are. run your own race, and trust in your ability. I truly believe that there is a program for everybody out there. Not be the location you want, it might not be the education you want. So you got to ask yourself, is it important to me? And if it is, then you might have to sacrifice in other areas.
Yeah.
But trust in your ability. Don't compare yourselves to the other players, and find the place that you believe in that coaching staff and that university to develop you um, for the next 40 years of your life.
I think that's advice that we should give everyone.
Yeah.
I mean, across the board, you're running your own race. Focus on that. Focus on what's important to you. I mean, that you could have given that advice to I mean, anybody, a coach. That's a great thing for coach, right? Don't compare yourself to other people. You're running your own race, and and figuring out what's most important to you. I think that's awesome. This is a good time to transition over to your program and the university. I love to give everybody an opportunity to kind of do some shout outs and brag a bit on what you've got going on there. So why don't you go ahead and what do you like about the program that you're building and also the university? Why should a kid put down Widener as one of his preferred schools to take a look at?
Yeah, we'll start from the academic side. We'll get into the baseball side. Academically, it's hard to find a school that allows you to be an engineer while also playing sports. That's huge. We're strong in a lot of sciences, nursing and things along those lines. It's a little difficult to do nursing and play baseball, but it is doable. Our business program, I joke with all the coaches around because everyone's like, oh, we have a good business school. Everybody has a good business school. The difference between ours is our alumni, that I think our alumni kind of makes that. But the true thing, and this applies to both the baseball side and the academic side, Widener's in Delaware County, in Pennsylvania, Delco, which is a identity of its own. But it's very blue collar here. Despite our price tag, I think some of those values of being blue collar are at this university. And I tell recruits and my players this all the time. Widener isn't Harvard. It's not Yale, right? You get that diploma. Everyone wants to hire you if they see that name. But at Widener, if you put in the work and you are showing that you are relentless in that pursuit of excellence, which is something we talk about in our program, you will see the rewards once you're done, right? If you're an average student, you're going to get an average job. Yeah. If you're a below average student, you're not going to get that. And that's the beauty of Widener from the academic standpoint.
Awesome.
From a baseball standpoint, the thing, and every program is unique and they like it, but for me, it's the development of leadership in our program. The moment you get into our program, you're treated like an adult and you're going to be held accountable for the things that you should be doing. It's your career, okay? I'm here to kind of watch over and help you develop.
Yep.
But if you want to just take BP and show up on game days and get beat, hey, it's your program, your career, your time. If you want to win games, show me. And that's where trust and loyalty kind of builds in. If a player tells me, hey, coach, I want to be an all-conference outfielder, I'm going to coach you to that. The moment you stop working, I'm going to stop pushing for that goal too.
Right.
Because your word means everything. And I think that's a little different. I've been around programs that everybody moves up each level together. For me, I think there's that individual piece in our program that's a little bit different. If you want something and it's inside of our team goals, let's push you to go there. And we talk about, in the last piece I'll say, is that relentless pursuit of excellence. And it's that pursuit that we're after, which makes us unique. You know, we know that we're not going to be perfect, but if we can stay on that path, that's where we're going to see the gains, and that's where we're going to learn our lessons.
Yeah.
But the big difference that I think with Widener is you're treated like an adult. Your word is your word, and if you break that word, it's hard to get back.
Yeah.
You know, and we want players to recognize that they control their own destiny here, and the coaching staff is just here to help them get better and to pursue that goal.
I like that. It is a bit unique. We always talk about these 14, 15, 16-year-old kids were basically they're forced into making adult decisions. But when you make that adult decision of what school you're going to go to, it's also adult to man up and live with those decisions and make it work if that's your decision. And I think we've kind of lost a little bit about that. That's why I love what you just said. That's great. I mean, to me, yes, there's a lot of reasons for the portal, but there's 4,000 people in the portal because there's a lot of people that made decisions that they didn't think through, and they made an adult decision. And are they being an adult now? I'm not judging anybody. You can do it. I think it's a great resource for coaches. But at the end of the day, we're raising people that we need, to have responsibility for the decisions that they've made. And I think that's great what you said. The coaching staff is here to help facilitate your development and your growth if you want to.
Right. That's it. And that's why our program is not for everybody. I think in years past, a lot of people left our program. I shouldn't say a lot, but a few players left our program because they were treated like adults, and when it was time for them to be held accountable, or they didn't just want to put in that work, right? And that's what that portal comes in. I think, not to go down that rabbit hole, I think it's both sides. I think it's the coaches. I think it's the players. But it goes back to the first thing we talked about is do your homework.
Yep, do your homework.
Just do your homework.
That's so absolutely. Absolutely. And I also like what you said, because I think I agree. There's a program for you. If you want to play college ball, there's a program for you. I mean, there's over 1,800 programs. It may not be the one that you had the banner on in your room in high school, but that doesn't mean that it's not a good fit for you. And I think that's really it gets back to kind of the making adult decisions and being and taking ownership of those decisions once you make those decisions, and having a coaching staff there to help you if you're wanting to. I think that's awesome, Coach. That was a great place to kind of wrap up. You've given some great advice. The program sounds awesome. I'll tell you what, I love doing these colleges and universities in my home state, because I've always said Pennsylvania is kind of the working class state, hard nose, blue collar, no matter where you go, outside the cities. But it's a bunch of blue collar guys that want to work hard and they want to make a difference in people's lives, and I think that's awesome and commendable to you, Coach. I'm looking forward to watching your program. Anything, any words or anything about this upcoming season? What do you think?
Yeah, I'm excited to see how we continue to develop. We had our first All-American in 32 years this past season.
Awesome.
And he's coming back, and we have an opportunity for a lot of young pitchers or pitchers that have been in the program for a while to finally see some time on the mound. So I'm really excited about them just having that opportunity, seeing what they do with it.
That's great.
So we're positive about the season. We're ready to get going. We just wrapped up fall ball with a Halloween game on Friday. So now it's weight room academics, and we'll see them back in January ready to go.
That's awesome. Coach, thank you very much. I really appreciate this opportunity.
Yeah, thank you, Eric. I really appreciate it. And, I look forward to using the Blue Book app later this week.
Okay, that sounds good. Thank you very much.